Hello everyone. Welcome folks back to the stream. Again, part of the preseason streams before the LTA begins. And last week, we took a look at the formatting that the LTA is undergoing and talked a little bit about that. But today we're getting the meat and potatoes of it, which are, of course, the rosters. And the offseason has been busy for both LTA North and South. I'm going to start with South, just because South is hidden time zone. So we'll be seeing South first this Saturday. 4 days till LTA starts, folks, and I am hyped for it. I can't wait. It's kind of interesting this season because when I was just looking through the roster changes, there are actually a lot of roster changes. In South, there are two teams that didn't make any changes, Pain and Red. And in the North, there's also, I think, two teams that didn't make changes, FlyQuest and TL. Everybody else made some changes left and right. But despite a lot of the changes, weirdly enough, I feel like, how do I put this? There have been the most changes on paper in terms of players, but I feel like this season might see the least amount of stylistic changes for the teams. More for the South than North. I think North has some stylistic changes that will happen, but in the South, LTA South, a lot of the teams are going to have very similar styles to what we had seen prior, both in CBLOL and in LOA, in the case of Istra Sestral and Leviathan in some regards. Okay, so how am I going to do this? Whoops. Okay. First off, let me explain the sort of two windows I have. This will be like the information window where I'm pulling up information on the teams and whatnot. Like sort of pre-prepped information. Here on the right, this is actually how I prep my casts. So every week before I cast, if the information is available, this is roughly kind of what I do. So this is my prep sheet. Now, I won't be filling out all the information necessarily that I would have in a full sheet, but just the sort of relevant information, sort of champ pools, some stats that I'm going to be running through for players, and like my thoughts on the players as well. I'm usually in the prep sheet, there's going to be head-to-head stats. I don't have one open, but I won't be doing like sort of the head-to-head or information or stats, just kind of what I think about the teams. And I'm going to go in order of sort of the matches that we are going to get. So with Pain Loud first, Gate Stars, and whatnot. And of course, me doing this also is kind of hint that, guys, we are going to be covering the matches in English and LTA South. That would be twitch.tv/LTA South. I believe we are still pending getting all the perms necessary, but yeah, we are intending to do that, and we'll be starting this Saturday. Unfortunately, we didn't cover the show match and the draw show last week, but we will be covering the matches. So let's start with Pain, one of only two teams in LTA South that didn't make any roster changes whatsoever. Now, there was a lot of talk about Curry potentially not being on this team for this split. I think he was thinking about potentially joining another team or something, but I'm glad to see that they stuck around. And the first thing to note, of course, is this is our current champions of CBLOL, which is kind of a weird situation to be in because we have merged with the LTA South, and that means like there's the LLA champion is also a thing. LA's champion was, I think, was it R7, I think? Yeah, it was R7. So R7's team is mostly playing in LTA North. So we won't be seeing necessarily a lot of that roster here. So to all intents and purposes, I'm going to consider PNG reigning champs for the LTA South, even though it's a brand new thing, basically. And I think that works out in their favor, considering how short the split is, 5 weeks. Having a team that's worked together and having that experience together, I think is going to be massive for the squad. The meta has changed quite a bit as well, but actually, let's talk a bit about meta in the patch, because I've finally gotten to see, the LPL, LCK games, a little bit of LEC, and it looks very brawl heavy. I will say this, the expectations I had were that this was going to be a more snowball-y split. I was thinking the early games would matter more, especially being able to play around your jungler or punish through the jungle, because I thought dives would be harder to execute with the changes to the minion pushing, because it's harder to stack waves now, but that hasn't been the case. Well, okay, the early game jungle action, yes, has been the case, but the mid to late game got a lot more chaotic. The snowballs have been especially bad. The game, I think, is speeding up with feats of strength. We're seeing a lot more brawls happening over the grubs, and we're seeing teams kind of draft towards early skirmishes. But when it hits mid to late game, especially around Atakan and Baron, teams have been throwing left and right. I feel like teams getting Atakan don't know how to play with the buff yet. They're playing like they have a GA. One huge key thing to note is it's not a GA when you get the low kill Atakan, because when you die, you respawn at Fountain. which means some of the fights are going kind of wonky, where they're playing like they have a massive advantage and they'll revive on the spot. They don't, and then the teams kind of lose fights and throws games, and or just extend games to like 40 plus minutes. Because I think average game time in most regions have actually gone up from last split. So I don't think teams have figured everything out yet. I think for CBLOL and for Latin LTA South as a whole, brawling is good. That is how we like to play as a whole, CBLOL and LLA. And I think for Pain especially, this is good for them. They were a very good skirmish team last year. So, yeah. Skirmish heavy is good for them. And also keeping roster same should be a huge advantage for split one. Now, I will... Two things. One other thing that I will talk about besides like how I think the team will perform in split one is how I think it will grow throughout the year. I don't expect Pain Gaming to be able to grow much more. I think right now, sorry, my pen is always going to do that. I remember click off first. Okay, the problem with this roster is I think Titan is pretty much maxed out. Like this guy is really, really good. Then Kiddo and Karaoke to me need to get better. They have more in the tank, but I need to see more. And unfortunately, the show match for Dinkido and Mel did not look great. I know that Dinkido was not the most practiced on Mel, and he just kind of played the champion because they won the draw for it. But I will say I think it needs a bit more work. So there is space for them to grow, but I'm looking at jungle and mid specifically to pop off. I think Wiser, Titan, and Curry. Well, Wiser and Titan are pretty much there. I think Curry can grow more. I just don't know how he's going to do it. His engaging is already the best in the league as it stands. So we'll have to see if they manage to grow more. Okay, now individual players. We know Wiser. This guy is the rock, the top lane. Super solid. Can carry. Can tank. Can weak side. And I think that's super important because we're seeing tanks be kind of the meta in the top lane right now. It's not about the carry top laners. I think that might change. Like there is certainly space for carry top laners, but right now meta is more tank than anything else. And Wiser will be perfectly fine there. You can just leave him alone. Jungle seems to have gone back to supportive like enablers, things like Sejuani, Ivern, Maokai, Wukong, like engagers, AoE. That to me was Karaoke's bread and butter. Like back in 2023, so two years ago now. Wow, that's weird to think. 2 years ago, those were Karaoke's best champs, right? The Sejuanis, the Maokais. And then 2024, he busted out all the AP mages. So I think he's fine. Champ pool should be fine. A lot of utility. Like that was when they were permabanning his what champion were they permabanning? Was it Maokai, I think, at the time? Where Karaoke just like had 100% ban rate. You just could not give him that champion. It was so disgusting. Yeah, so his champ pool should be fine. There's a lot of utility there. But my concern for Karaoke a little bit was that he looked a little bit distinct from the rest of the team. Especially in early skirmishes. And we can't do that in new meta. So I need to make sure I need to see Pain make sure that they are on the same page with Karaoke. Like if they want to go in, if Karaoke is going in, the rest of the team needs to back him up. Now Dinkido is my biggest concern because he's got a lot of versatility. Like 80 carry meta, he was fine. Carries on like Azir, he had some stellar play on that champion. But somehow I feel like Dinkido needs that star quality, you know? Like he needs to be able to pop off and be the hard carry. Like I want to see House level plays from this guy. And unfortunately, I think we were lacking a lot of that in 2024, especially in Split 2. Dinkido wasn't the focus of this team. And I think jungle mid becomes really important, especially with Atakan, because you don't know which side Atakan's going to spawn on necessarily. Top lane could get really spicy with some of the top laners we have. There's more kills up there. Atakan spawns up there. I don't think, watching the LPL and LCK and LEC, that teams have figured out necessarily how to tell where Atakan's going to spawn. Like, sometimes it's really obvious, like when all the kills are happening in the top lane and stuff. But yeah, it could be a little bit risky. And then Titan Curry, I think Titan... my personal MVP vote for this guy. I think he'll be really, really strong. And with the changes we're seeing to the bot lane as well, last split, Smalley felt like the only AD carry who was really contesting, or Smalley Pro Delta specifically as a bot lane felt like the only bot lane actively contesting Titan Curry. Every other bot lane has kind of got bent and folded over. Even Brunsey Frosty really mechanical lane. They struggled. Ayu Jojo, frankly, didn't live up to the hype in the laning phase of things. So, yeah, I think this is going to be the strongest point of the map. And with the meta kind of shifting, I don't say like completely shifted towards it, but we're seeing a lot more early game AD carries. I think that's perfectly in Titan's wheelhouse. So, super happy for that. Curry is perfect the way he is. Yeah, I'm very very hyped for this bot lane. Basically, this is always going to be my big point to watch for Pain Gaming, and they should be fine. And playing up against Loud, of course. Yeah, I think I've made clear my sentiments on that in the community Discord. Look, I know Pain versus Loud is always going to be like a really hype matchup. I have way too much Pain DSD for this, but we'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting if nothing else. Yeah, and because of that, Pain no changes. Kind of boring to talk about. We know what we expect. Loud has changes though, and I think this one's more exciting and more interesting. So on Gringos Liberados, we talked a little bit about Wiz and him coming in. And my thoughts on Wiz might be kind of wrong. But, you know, let's set up Robo, Tinons, and Root first. Because these are the guys we know, right? This is just, it's Robo. Like, we saw it in the show match. He's still really, really good at the 1v1s. He's still got great carry potential, but he still has a tendency to overextend, overpush a lane. And if his team's not on the same page, he's going to get punished. But overall, this guy it's Robo. He's consistently inconsistent. I think we can just kind of leave it at that. I don't expect, and with the tanks or bruises that we're mostly seeing, I don't think it's necessarily his meta to shine that bright. Tinons. Now, Tinons is interesting because I thought 2024 was actually one of his worst years. He was very quiet in AD carry meta. And now we've kind of moved away from AD carry meta, but at the same time, I still expect to see the occasional like Tristan in the mid lane. I think it can be abused to just, because we're in full fearless, right? If you're picking AD carries in the mid lane, you can actually ban out a lot of AD carries and force the AD carries onto other styles of champions as well. So I think that is a potential possibility. I don't know if Loud wants to do that. I'm not sure how good or how huge Root's champion pool might be, especially on off picks. We're seeing a lot of Victor bot lane or the potential of Victor bot lane right now. I don't know if Root's polished on his mages, so might or might not. But at the same time, Tinons is, if we call Robo consistently inconsistent, Tinons is just straight up consistent. And he's insanely good on mages, which I think we've kind of moved back towards in the mid lane. So I think he'll be a really solid point. Root is, you know, perfect the way he is. Root's really, really, really good. Like, this guy was the best performer on the Loud roster ever since he's joined it, basically. At Worlds, he's been performing. He doesn't crack under pressure. He just does whatever the team needs. So he's going to be absolutely massive. When I look at this bot lane, my bigger question is actually how winsome is going to perform. Because when Root had Seos, Loud's bot lane was the best in the league, bar none. Now, granted, we didn't have Titan Curry really. Like, we had a couple of weeks of Titan Curry. They hadn't fully meshed. But Root with Redbird didn't feel that good. Redbird was not a lane dominant support. And I'm going to be honest, like, I like Redbird as a guy. I think he had a lot of weight on his shoulders. I also don't think he was the best roaming support. So I felt like in that way, it actually kind of really hurt Loud spot lane, Root specifically in his ability to perform the way to really maximize. So I think the support matters a lot for Root to be able to multiply as a force multiplier to how good he is. Now, Winsome's interesting because Winsome's not exactly a rookie. He's had some time on, you know, LCS rosters in the past. He's played in the NACL. He actually, his most recent competitive match was in Sao Paulo in the Riot Arena when he was playing in the America's Challengers tournament from the NACL second seed Furex Starforge. So Winsome, to me at least, when I've been watching in the NACL, he's not the most lane dominant. The Wilkes after, hey Wilkes, first of all, good to see you. After America's Challenges, Winsome for you, zero hype on him. Yeah, that's fair. And even within the NACL, he wasn't often considered like the most hyped support. He was a good roaming support, but he's not lane dominant. And yeah, I think for Winsome, it's more about the macro. It's about the mind. To a certain degree, I look at Winsome as like a less experienced Trimby coming in. So I'm a little bit concerned about how the lane is going to go. Because here in Brazil, or in LTA South, we have a lot of really strong bot lane duos. And I fear that Winsome's not going to get out of lane untouched. Now, I have heard that Winsome is playing solo queue with Wiz. which I think is good and can create an interesting scenario where you've got a really strong jungle support roaming duo, which can impact the rest of the map. And when you've got, oh my goodness, sorry, I keep doing that. My bad. Yeah, every time I try to switch to a pen, I keep doing that. And with Robo, Tinones, and Root, I actually think it's perfectly fine for Winsome to just roam and leave Root alone. Root has shown he can survive 1v2s and still be very, very relevant. And if you can get Robo and Tinones ahead with those sort of roams, I think it could be a viable strategy. So that's what I guess I want to see from this Loud roster, because I fear that they can't just sit back and skill anymore. This is not the right metaphor. You have to be very aggressive. And so when I'm looking at Winsome, I'm looking at him to learn from Wiz and work with Wiz, or learn from Root and work with Root and be just some force multiplier for them. I'm not looking at him to be a Jojo, to be a Curry, to be a Pro Delta, you know? And that's why I left Wiz for last. Because, oh my goodness, I'm doing this again. I'm sorry. Because as much as Redbird to Winsome, I consider this an upgrade. I'm going to be honest. Most because I think Redbird simply just didn't work well with how Loud wanted to play. So I consider this an upgrade. But Croc to Wiz on the podcast, on Gringos Liberados, this was my biggest concern, because I don't know if this is an upgrade necessarily. Yes, I'm going to be honest, Croc threw a lot of games. Generally, when Loud had their worst games, it was when Croc horrifically underperformed. But at the same time, I'm a very firm believer that Loud won those 4 back-to-back championships because of Croc. Because Croc's ceiling was so incredibly high. And I don't know if Wiz has that. Wiz is really good, don't get me wrong. Like, I think Wiz is a great player. You can plug and play on any team in the LTA South, and he'd be a good pickup. The only ones I'm kind of hesitating for is probably like maybe the what did I say? It was the Istris Estral roster with Jose Diodo. And the other one that I was a bit hesitant on was the Red Cannons jungle, because Wiz and Aegis just fulfill such different roles. But I think on any other team, even Pain, you could plug Wiz in and it'd be great. But he's not Croc, and he doesn't have that sort of huge variance that Croc had, for better or for worse. That said, I do think on Furia, Wiz was very, very good, and he was proactive and stable. And I don't think there's any Furia game where I look at it and I go, oh, Wiz threw that game. You know, it's always either Wiz did great or like Wiz was solid. So I think he's a great piece to have, but he's my biggest question mark on filling Croc's shoes, basically. And again, that's not a question about that's not to say Wiz isn't good or I think he's downgrade. It's more, I don't know if we can fill Croc's position. And I want to see him be a strong early voice for this team. And now, here I go again. And I was talking about, okay, going into Split 1, I'm not expecting Loud to do well in Split 1. I think Winsome and Wiz will need some time to get in there. I think Loud as a whole needs some time to figure out how they want to play. So I think Split 1 will be rough. But if Wiz works out and Winsome works out, I think this team could be, again, a top contender. Like a top 2 or top 3 team. Come Split 2, Split 3. Specifically, I'm looking at Wiz. And playstyle wise, I think Loud will still be the same playstyle as ever, which is, Robo is going to do Robo things in playoffs. Tinones is going to scale up late, and then Root's going to be the primary carry. I don't think Wiz and Winsome transformed their playstyle at all. So that's what I mean when I say, like, there's been a lot of roster changes to Split, but I don't think a lot of stylistic changes for a lot of the teams. Loud is still going to be the same old Loud. Wooks, you hope that they don't lean on Korean comms, because if they do, you predict a disaster. Ooh, that's an interesting point. I also hope they don't lean on Korean comms, but I will say I actually don't think they will be a disaster. And the reason why I say that is because Robo and Tinones are very independent. Hey, Lunar. Therefore, hello to you too. Yeah, I think Robo, Tinones, and Root are very, very independent. So even if they switch to Korean comms for Wiz, Root, and Winsome, I think it'll be fine. Like, Root's really the one. Yeah, Root will be fine even without comms. I agree. I don't think it'll be amazing if they do that. And they'll probably just play for skill for late comms if they do that, which is not ideal. But I think the floor for Loud as a whole is just really, really strong. With Aoshi as a coach as well, why not bring back Stardust or another? Okay, that's true actually, folks. I didn't really consider Aoshi as the coach, but that's true. Well, in-game comms, Aoshi won't be there. I think how they communicate in game will affect Aoshi less. But I do agree with your point that, yeah, if they want that many Koreans on the team and they want to play a Korean style, then bring back Stardust. I personally sit on Gringos Silverados. I was not a fan of Stardust last split. I don't I didn't see what he added. From the loud behind the scene videos, it looked like Stardust was struggling to deal with Robo and Tinon specifically in terms of how he was coaching. So my guess is just that Stardust's style didn't work with Robo and Tinon, so they needed a different coach. I do feel like Aoshi is going to be good in general for this team, though. He's much more hands-on and communicative to get his point across. And I think being able to speak Portuguese with Robo and Tinon is going to be bigger than being able to speak Korean with Wiz, Root, and Winsome. Winsome speaks perfectly fluent English as well, so I'm not too worried about that whatsoever. Yeah, the problem points, or at least from what I could see from last split, in game and from behind the scenes videos that from Loud, it looked like Robo and Tinon were the sticking point. So I think that's why Aoshi and not a Korean coach. Okay. So again, nothing too crazy. I'm not going to bother checking the stats of these players because I know these players well enough. The stats I'm mostly going to be checking from the LTA side, I suspect. But by and large, these two are kind of boring teams. Kate Stars and Leviathan, though. These two are... Whoops, I added an extra... Leviathan. There we go. Added an extra H. Robo, the GOAT of Brazil. Lunar, I don't know. Greatest of all time feels... I mean, there's a case to be made for it, but personally, I ain't about that. Kate Stars versus Leviathan is very interesting, though. So when we talk about how some teams, their style is going to stay the same, I think that's not true for these two teams. So let's start with Kate Stars. We're more familiar with Kate Stars here because we covered CBLOL. I'm a CBLOL caster, so obviously we're not so familiar with that. I have been informed since the Gringos Liberados podcast that Bull, oh my goodness, here I go again. Bull was not necessarily the first choice for Kate Stars, unfortunately. It was Gigo, but Gigo got offered a massive, huge bag from Furia. So yeah, they lost Gigo. Kate Stars went hunting, and they finally settled on Bull. And I think that's a very, very interesting choice because Bull has not really played too much competitive since 2023. That's one entire year away from competitive. He played in Tier 3 last year for GE, but they didn't qualify into Academy. So Bull has not had that much competitive experience last split. So I'm very interested in seeing how Bull works out. I think Bull's play style as well, back when we saw him, he was playing carries, things like Jax, like Irelia. I mean, he's known for his Irelia. And I'm going to be honest, his bruisers didn't really impress me. It was fine. Like, I'm not going to say he's bad on bruisers, but I don't think he specialized in them. And right now, meta is tankier top laners, which is not Bull's wheelhouse. So I'm very curious to see how this works out up here. Compared to Gigo, who... Gigo can carry, but he can also weak side. His Ornn was a thing of legends. And I don't think Bull has that level of like Ornn or tank. Lunar, this is fearless and best of 3. All previous stats are useless. Kind of agree. I think the stats are a lot less relevant compared to last split. Stats from last split are a lot less relevant now. However, I think certain stats are still like KDA, KP, DPM, GD at 15, things like that are still somewhat useful just to get a feel for what sort of player this is and how they like to play. So, so it wasn't first choice, big carry player, questionable on weak side. Yeah, Bull's going to need resources, which actually kind of works out. And I'm just contrasting this Gigo, where Gigo is often left on an island. Desamis ganks Gigo not to help Gigo, but to kind of just get kills and accelerate himself more than anything else. You give Gigo 1 or 2 successful ganks, and top lane's kind of over for the most part. Best of 3 changes everything. Adaptation is king. Agree, Lunar. 100% agree. But fundamental mechanics still does show in some stats. And again, when I'm looking at the players I'm less familiar with, who I haven't seen as much tape, that's when I'm going to rely more on stats. Whereas that's why I'm not pulling up stats for like Bull or Desamis, or Kissy, sorry. Apparently that's how his name's pronounced. I found that out mid America's Challengers because the CBLOL casters had referred to him as, or the Academy casters referred to him as Kisei for like the entire split. Those guys, I know their stats, or I know their playstyle. I'm not as worried about their stats. Desamis is the same old amazing jungler. I've said it before. I think Kasama is one of the best junglers in CBLOL, and I was super happy when K-Stars allowed him to really display that. I think it's going to be the same for him again. He's got a good sense of macro and micro, and really the only thing for Desamis is which lane he plays for. Might change up a little bit because last split with Smalley and Pro Delta in the bot lane, we saw a lot of Desamis spending time in the bot lane. And actively trying to get them ahead because Smalley and Pro Delta could absolutely run a game. This split's completely different. Morteus and Trimby are not, unfortunately, the same style of players at all. Yeah, Morteus is good, but Smawi had an amazing split, like just absolutely cracked. And Pro Delta plays for lane. Trimby, not so much. Kind of like Winsome, he plays more macro style. So that one's going to be kind of interesting. The mid lane too is actually going to be massively a huge question mark, because the Leko had an amazing start to the split, but Leko's problem was that he was always more of a, I will soak the pressure and I will survive. It was rare to see Oleko be the big carry player for the team. It was more like, okay, yeah, Tinons, Dinkido, House, no problem. I'm just going to stay alive, don't feed you gold, farm up, and then just be somewhat relevant later on in team fights. Kissy is not that style of player. This guy, I mean, he's been to international events for OS. He is not a rookie by any means, even though he's an academy promotion. And he's a really strong laner. Like, think in terms of like Tukui. He's similar to Tukui, which works out really well for Kate Stars because that's what they want in the first place, right? Really strong laner, big carry. And his champ pool, he's got a champ ocean, man. I think it's going to be an issue for other teams. Like, he can whip out all sorts of weird picks coming out from the mid lane. And in this full fearless best of 3, like Luna was saying, adaptation is king. Kissy can definitely adapt. And I think Kissy's going to have a lot of pocket counter picks in this meta. So I think, if anything, we might see the Samus actually camp the mid lane a lot more. And I'd love to see the Samus and Kissy start working together to dominate the middle of the map, because whoever gets the middle of the map kind of gets more control over the objectives, which is a huge part right now of the meta. So if anything, Kissy's kind of like my player to watch on this roster. And I think if Kate Stars do well, it will be because of Kissy. So right now, what I'm kind of saying is I feel like Bull is a bit of a downgrade from Gigo. The Samus is Samus. Kissy's an upgrade. So that's net 0, right? Kinda. Now we hit the bot lane, which is interesting. Because if you had asked me about the bot lane last split, like, think of it, end of 2023, beginning of 2024. We haven't seen Smawi play in CBLOL. If you ask me Morteus or Smawi, I'll tell you Morteus. Morteus is, in Academy, was one of the best. He was the best AD carry prospect, I think, till Marvin came along this year. And Marvin just kind of blew everything open. Marvin's a whole different beast altogether. But Morteus is stable. And I think he's actually gone through the right system. He's ready for CBLOL mentally and physically. He is, it feels like the natural progression for Morteus. And I don't expect to see him fold the way like Juliera or what was Kaboom's AD carry? Raven. You know, like players like that who just entered CBLOL, they were hot in Academy, and then they just got crushed. That's not going to happen. I think Morteus, he's ready for CBLOL. Or LTA South, as it is now. However, there is a caveat to that. I think Morteus is good. I do not think Morteus will be a top 3 AD carry. Whoops. Yeah. Right now, our AD carry pool is just so stacked that I don't think Morteus will be a top 3. Just looking at AD carries, right? First of all, he lost to Marvin in Academy. He was very, very competitive, but I don't feel like he was better than Marvin for the most part. Against Ayu, I mean, Ayu's mechanics are unquestioned right now. Yes, he didn't pop off last split that well, but his mechanics were certainly not the issue. You've got Root, who I put above him as well, who's like the AD carry. The way we talk about Wiser in the top lane is how we talk about Root in the bot lane, right? You've got Titan Curry, who's like the best bot lane right now. You've got Brunsey, who's still showing insane mechanics. And in terms of Seo and Ackerman as well, Snaker, pardon me, and Seo, I think both of them are really, really good. I think a lot of Brazilians are sleeping on the LOA teams just because we haven't seen tape on them. But their bot laners aren't bad by any means. So I think Morteus is in for a really rough time. It would be an accomplishment, I feel like, for Marvin and Morteus, pardon me, if they can be not bottom 3 in this split, in their first split in. Because it is really rough. That's the hardest role for them to transition through. LATAM gets at least one team in playoffs. Like, I assume you mean LATAM as an LLA, or like the former LLA, right, Lunar? You think Lion can beat C9? Potentially. We'll talk about the North side tomorrow at the same time. Yeah, today I'll just focus on the South, but I think North is more... Actually, is it more interesting? I have more question marks about the North than I do about the South, I guess. Yeah, so the problem for Morteus is, I think the goal is to not be bottom 3 AD carry. Because this league is so stacked with AD carries. Now, Trimby is a bit of a question mark to me. I've said it before. I don't actually watch the LEC very much. I'll watch like highlight reels. I'll watch, review videos once in a while, or like summaries of what's happening in the LEC. So I actually am not that familiar with Trimby's playstyle. But from what I've heard, he's a good macro support, good roaming specifically, like really good map awareness style of player. Now that could be good for Desamis and Kissy. And in a way it's good because when I look at this roster with Bull, you need to play for the top lane a little bit because, again, I don't think Bull is a particularly good weak side player, but give him a carry and he's got the mechanics for it. So you kind of need to play to the top lane a little bit. So having a good roamer is one thing. It might screw Morteus a little bit. And I think that's kind of dangerous to just leave a rookie AD carry to just suffer with roaming. So I have massive question marks about how this roster works. And this is completely different from last split where we had Smalley and Pro Delta be the focus of the team and everybody plays towards spot side. Now this time on this roster, it feels like everybody's got to play towards mid and top specifically. I'm actually going to say you have to play for top. I fear to leave Bo alone in a 1v1. South at least week 1 seems one-sided. Yeah, I was not super happy with the draws that came through, folks. I agree. I think the week 1 is going to be not only week 1, I think even round 2 as well, week 2 might still be kind of messed up. Like one side of the bracket feels much harder. Trimby's a shot caller. He's early and mid-game macro. Okay, that's good. I mean, at least they'll keep that much because I think Pro Delta was a huge shot caller for this team last split as well. So yeah, having a shot caller from the support position could be good. It'll be good for Morteus in lane as well. I just don't know how well Trimby can shot call when he's under the gun. Right, like when every bot lane is pressuring you that hard, will he be able to still have that level of shot calling when he was pressured? I know that for Karaoke, as a shot caller, his mechanics suffered when he was trying to shot call. I'm trying to think who else in previous splits had said stuff like that, where when they were shot calling, they couldn't play as well. I can't quite remember who else. I think BRTT might have had the same kind of issue in the past. So yeah. Yeah, I've got big questions about Gate Stars, and I'm worried. I don't. They were second last split off of Smalley and Pro Delta absolutely popping off. I don't have that faith in them this split, and not just split 1 either. I'm talking like the entire year. Split 1, I think they will. I actually think they will overperform in split 1 off the back of Kissy, because I think teams are going to have to get used to full fearless, and Kissy's pool is going to mess up a lot of the tier 1 players who have not really touched full fearless up till now. So I think they might overperform, get some surprise wins. But in split 2, I think Kate Stars are going to get run. And in split 3, it comes down to how good is the coaching staff, right? Can CL actually get everybody up to snuff, get them to level, get them to the Brazilian style fast enough? And the meta is not doing them any favors either. I think mechanical supports like Frosty will do much better than map aware supports like Trimby or Winsome. But we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe those teams just don't get to the objective fast enough. I'd be surprised, but yeah, we'll see. Leviathan. So now we are into the LLA organizations. Leviathan as an organization is actually kind of funny. From what I heard, they are not particularly well loved in the LLA. They had some very weird rosters. Some of you might recognize names on this roster. Beanie and Vavel. These guys were the Loud Academy bot lane from, I'll say 2023 or 2020. Or split 1, I can't remember. But they used to be CBLOL Academy players. They played in LA Tier 1 on Leviathan. And Leviathan, I don't know, man. Like that roster was kind of weird. This roster they picked up is much, much, much better, to be fair. So we'll start at the top lane. Zothvi on Estral. We mentioned before, R7 was the top team in LLA. They're playing on the north. They as part of a merger between Karma 6 or 6 Karma and R7 are playing in LTA North now under Lion Gaming. Infinity, I don't know what happened to this roster. None of these guys are anywhere. Like they all just vanished. I don't know. Maybe they're tired. I think Grell doesn't want to come back to Brazil. That's fine and understandable. Kind of sad Nia didn't look back. But again, we didn't need supports, I guess. Lunar Leviathan is a CS org. They throw money at everything and hope it works. Well, looking at this roster, they threw money down the drain. This is not a roster which I think was particularly well Like, with the money you spent, you could have bought better players. But this split, certainly they're throwing money around because Estrel, as you can see, was 4th seed. They actually lost to Isurus, funnily enough. But I think Estrel actually has a good roster, and I think most people agree, which is why we're seeing more Estrel players back in than Isurus players necessarily. And Isurus Estrel meant that they could only keep some of the players because they wanted to keep some of the Isurus players as well. So here's where the other Estrel players ended up in Brazil on the Leviathan. Grell became a father last week. Oh, thanks for the information, Wilkes. Well, congrats to Grell. Being a father is a big deal. I remember Tuts, when he became a father, got a dad buff too. The first 2 weeks after that, he was just stomping people left and right. But yeah, it's hard to be a father and also, try and keep and be an athlete or an esports athlete, right? Like the amount of hours you have to put in, it's kind of hard. So props to Grell, and hey, yeah, makes sense if he's taking the split off or even the year off to kind of focus on family. Family is very, very important. Okay, Zothvi on Estrel though. Ironically, I was not a huge fan of him necessarily. I didn't think he was that amazing. His KDA is pretty good at least. High kills, pretty low deaths. Okay. So yeah, the biggest problem for me, yes, this is part of my problem with Zothvi. Because I didn't religiously follow the LA. I watched some of the LO games, mostly their playoffs. And Zothvi felt like he was not present a lot of the times, if that makes sense. Like he kind of just wasn't there. And you can see in the playoffs, first of all, LA only had 6 teams. So their playoffs was, no, did they have 6 teams? I think they had 6 teams, right? Let me double check. I know they lost some teams last year. Yes, they had 6 teams, so their playoffs is only 4 teams. So Zothvi was not playing particularly well in playoffs, and that's mostly what I watch. But his regular season stats seem to bear that out. He was fine for KDA, but 7 teams. They had 7 teams? Okay, 7 teams in split in their opening season, and then they lost all nights in the closing season. Okay. Yeah. That's fair. Okay. Call it 6.5 over the 2. We'll round it up to 7. Yeah, so Zothvi didn't particularly impress me. Now, I assume that nobody could get Summit, and that's why we ended up with Zothvi. But I think in the current climate of the LTA South, when I look at these top laners, I feel like Zothvi is going to get run. I thought he was meh in LA, and LA's top laners didn't particularly impress me. Here in LTA South, I think he might be the weakest. Champions he was playing. Okay, he had some wall. I think he had a Yasuo top. I mean, he's got a more than a champ pool, I guess. More than a champ puddle. Decent champ pool. But I don't feel like he's a specialist, or he particularly excels in any of them. And I think that's going to be like really, really hard. Like I'm worried about Bull. I think Bull would probably handle Zothvi in lane 1v1 just fine. And that means Leviathan's going to have to spend more resources. And I'm going to assume that K-Star is going to play the top to make sure Bull doesn't feed or like int. Because when you're a lot of these big carry players who don't necessarily weak side, well, like they are very coin flippy. So Scary has to go there, I guess. I don't know. This is where I'm most concerned. For Leviathan. If you have one lane that's hemorrhaging, you're going to have problems. Okay. Scary, one of my favorite junglers. Now, here's the thing. Scary, I don't know if you all saw some of the media day pictures or the profile pics. Scary had the firefighter outfit on, and I was laughing when I saw that because I do think he's the biggest firefighter in Brazil. Okay, in CB LoL, to be specific. I think he's the biggest firefighter in Brazil. But I don't think he's the greatest mechanical jungler. When I look at the junglers we have, okay, Tatu's mechanical, Drake Hero's mechanical, Aegis is mechanical, Desam is mechanical, Jose Diodo's mechanical. I don't think Scary is a mechanical jungler. I think of him more as like Karaoke, like more cerebral, supportive, and great for comms. Absolutely wonderful for communications. But that's in Brazilian, in Portuguese. Now with two Chileans and Argentinian, I don't know if Scary can be have the same effect if they're all like if language could potentially be an issue. So I really like Scary. I don't think this is the right team for him. And we'll have to see how that pans out, whether or not he can be that force to kind of bring this entire team together. So already the first two players I look on the button, I have major concerns. And then we've got Cody in the mid lane. Cody also from Estral, and I thought Cody was good, actually. So, okay, mediocre KDA, high on kills, high on deaths. Okay, so he's just kind of getting in there, getting action happening. Actually, one of the stats that I do like to see. Okay, wait, hold on. Estral Esports Season 14 Summer is DPM or damage share and kill participation. Okay. And damage share on the team. So yeah, this is kind of what caught my eye. Wolk's Cody best Ari in LTA South on Addy. Bruh, he didn't play a single game of Ari in summer. And Ari was, she was played in summer. But yeah, I do think Cody's a good player. And I think the damage share kind of tells a bit of a story. Because I think Snaker and Ackerman are really good bot lane as well. And the fact that Cody like actually out damaged them for percent damage share, I think is massive. He reminds me a little bit of House, actually. Albeit less easier, more quirky. But I think he's mechanically very, very good. And he's a big carry, which is good in general. I think especially this split, I'm looking at the mid laners, and I don't feel like mid lane is our carry lane for a lot of the lanes. So, yeah, I think when I look at mid laners who carry, who's kind of like 50-50 for me, Cody, Kissy, and Miru. Funnily enough, I think a lot of our Brazilian mid laners like Tuts, Tinon, Stinkido, and Greftar, they can carry occasionally, but that's not their default state. So I think Cody will be good. He's a big carry, and he'll be good for the scene to kind of wake up the mid laners to try and be a little bit more. Then we come to Seo, who, where did he come from? Seo was from R7. Yeah, so we saw Seo at the world stage, the internationals, worlds, and it's kind of weird because I thought Seo was actually good, but at the same time, I had my problem with Seo was that he felt like he wasn't stable. Like when he's good, but then he also like kind of got in some bad positions sometimes. Oh, interesting. Kenny, I don't know how to pronounce that name actually. I know I've been told it's not Kane. I've heard people pronounce it Kenny or Kana. Yeah, Kana did more damage. Percent share for Seo wasn't amazing. Okay, that's a little bit surprising for me. I actually thought at Worlds that he looked pretty good, Seo, but I felt like he crumbled a little bit under pressure. So to me, the most important stat for AD carries is damage share and DPM. Specifically DPM more than damage share, because damage share can be affected by other things. Oh wow, this is so weird. Seo had the lowest damage share, DPM in regular season, but he had the highest in playoffs. And at Worlds, like I said, I thought Seo was pretty decent. Okay. Okay. So I think Seo is going to be a big question mark. I, at least mechanically, think he should be able to hang with the CBLOL bot laners. That's my guess. And then we come to Prods, who's probably like one of my favorite supports, personally. Pain Gaming Academy into Pain Gaming into VKS, where he did wonderfully, incredibly well in all of them. I think him and Curry were the big question marks. Who was the best support last split? It was going to be one of the two of them. And the trajectory this guy's been on, I find it a travesty. So I found out that, okay, Gigo left Cade Stars, not because Cade Stars dropped him, but because Furia offered him the bag. I didn't hear about Pro Delta. I'm going to assume that Prods was dropped for Trimby. That's my assumption, because yeah, I think all of us in Gringos Liberados Oh, we haven't dropped that. Okay, all of us in Gringos rather shared the same thought about Pro Delta on this team. I'll leave it at that. When the second episode of Gringos Liberados drops, you'll understand what I said, why I said what I said. But suffice to say, I think Pro Delta is incredible. On paper, if Seo and Pro Delta can connect, I expect this to be a very good bot lane. But bombs in different languages. My big issue right now is I don't know how Seo and Pro Delta are going to go with communication. I'm going to assume they're probably going to use English, maybe, to communicate. That seems to be how a lot of teams with mixed nationalities communicate, or mixed languages communicate. I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, keep in mind, Pro Delta worked with BVOI, right? So Pro Delta has worked in English before. And with Smalley, same thing. So for me, I guess it's a bigger question of how Seos works with Pro Delta. The other benefit of Pro Delta is I think Pro Delta has worked with two different AD carries so far who play very, very differently stylistically. So I think Pro Delta should be able to adapt. He's the smallest question mark on this team for me, funnily enough, actually. Him and Cody, I think, are going to be good. Everything else on Leviathan, I don't know how this is going to work, man. It just sounds insane. Pain fans equals hater. Wait, I'm not hating on anybody here, Lunar. Like, that's not fair, man. I love Pro Delta. And Pain fans didn't hate Pro Delta either, actually. We love prods. And I think a lot of Pain fans were very upset, actually, initially when we dropped prods for Curry. It ended up being for the better of Pain. But, yeah, I was one of those Pain fans who was a bit upset when we dropped Pro Delta as well, after his amazing rookie year. Rookie split, actually. Yeah. So because of this, Leviathan, to me, is, on paper, I think they're the weakest team. Going into split one, they're going to try and rely individually on sheer raw mechanics. And I don't think they have what it takes. Like, I don't think Zothvi and Scary are the most mechanical players. Cody, Seo, and Pro Delta are in for a very, very rough time. I think Cody's going to have the best time of it on this team. But we've seen in CB LoL in the past multiple times, a good mid cannot carry a team alone. So I think they're going to struggle. Split 2 is the proving ground for me. Either they're going to mesh and they're going to figure out their problems and they'll actually be half decent, or they're going to fall apart and then they're going to be the worst team come split 3. And we're going to have that, bottom tier, like 0-10, 0-18 style team. And I think Leviathan, they've got a lot to prove. For me right now, they are the ones that I think are really going to struggle. We'll see how that goes. But I am least optimistic for them. And stylistically, I guess that matches what they've done in previous splits, which is their rosters don't mesh terribly well. Like, I look at this Johnny, Ganks, Nobody, Beanie, Vavo roster, and I don't think, oh, this was a great roster. I just think, wow, what a eclectic mix of players. And I look at this and I'm thinking the same thing. Like, I don't think you can just ignore Zothvi in the top lane. I don't know if he's a weak side player. I don't know enough to know if he can be a weak side player. You want to play for the bot lane, the bot side of the map, but I don't know if Seo is going to be like Smalley levels where he can 1v2 and win that lane. And that means Pro Delta might get locked into lane and can't roam. Yeah, it's just a lot of like potential discord, dissynergy that might come through here. Okay. And now we come to the other LLA team, Istris Estral, which I said on the Gringos of the Brothers, I'm saying it again. I don't understand why this is the guest team. Or I guess I understand. It's probably money. Leviathan probably had more money. But honestly, I thought Istris Estral, this roster they put together, should have been the LA partner instead of the guest team. Because this looks way better. And I've heard rumors, apparently, that Istris Estral is smashing scrims right now. Like, that teams are respecting the mechanical prowess of these players. And you look at it, this is like the LA All-Star team. Like, sure, R7 might have won the season last season, but Istris Estral, this looks way scary to me. We've got Bertle coming in from the LPL LGD, and I've heard, again, same sources talking about their scrims, saying that Bertle is a monster, a beast. Like, this guy is really, really good. Yeah. And that he can smash on carries, and he can smash even on like lane bruisers and still have a ton of impact later on. So yeah, he's got pretty good map awareness from what I've heard, or map or team fight awareness. I'm not quite sure. From keep in mind, a lot of these sources that I'm reading on Twitter, I'm using like Google Translate to read, so I might be misunderstanding a little bit. But nevertheless, I mean, yeah, he wasn't the best in the LPL, but LPL top laners are just built different. So, huge props to this guy. Jose Diodo, absolute legend. I mean, this guy was the first LoL player in LCS. Lunar, Birdo is lost on the map. That's his issue in major regions. Okay, so I guess, yeah, he's got good team fight awareness more than map awareness. Okay, I'm glad that I changed that. Yeah, because I wasn't 100% sure when I was reading the translations there. Okay. And honestly, for map awareness as well, I think the current meta has simplified map awareness a lot, in that teams are going to be wanting to set up for objectives more than anything else. So we're not going to see as much split push forcing a lot of questionable decisions from teams. It's going to be a lot about, okay, just be at the team fight when you need to be at the team fight. So it simplifies your map awareness a little bit. I mean, you still need to have good TPs as a top laner, but you can kind of rely on your team to scrim for you a little bit more. Yeah, Jose Diodo, mechanical player, very aggressive player, very skirmish heavy style. That much has not changed. And this guy's an absolute legend. In a region where I feel like our weakest role, traditionally Brazil, has been our jungle position, I think Jose Diodo is like, he's like Croc, but more stable, if anything. And we've seen Jose Diodo on the world stage as well. As a jungler, he can hang out at an international level. So I think he's going to do wonderfully here in the LTA South. And I feel like for the teams in LTA South, when you're up against Issus Estral, the big question is, can you survive the early game of Jose Diodo? If you can't, then you might just get run over and snowballed on. So I think that's going to be a massive issue. And then we've got Miru, who played in the LFL last split on M8. I don't actually know how he did in the LFL, but back when he was in the LA in 2023, this guy was really, really solid. And he is like a massive carry in 2023. We saw him actually on R7 in both Worlds and MSI. And he was not a weak spot. So you just don't trust non-verbal junglers like Jose Diodo. Was he non-verbal? I thought back when he was on was it FlyQuest? Forget which team brought him in. Yeah, it was FlyQuest. On FlyQuest, I heard that he was fine. Like, he was communicating perfectly fine. Yeah, that his English was okay. It was, yeah, okay to kind of do that. After Audie's first retirement, considered the best jungler in the Latin scene. Yeah, I'd almost agree with that. I think, yeah. I know Audie's really, really highly regarded, but I actually kind of still prefer Jose Diodo personally. Yeah. I didn't hear any issues about his communication, but I guess he's not like a shot caller from a jungle role, which is fair. On a team like this, I'm actually curious how much of an issue that becomes, actually, because I don't know, like, if, like, I assume Berto's not particularly communicative. I haven't heard of Miru being a particularly big shot caller back when he was in R7. So maybe Ackerman. I know Ackerman has been a shot caller in the past. So I guess Ackerman will have to primary shot call instead of Jose Diodo there. Yeah, I guess if this team falls apart, it would be on communications. That would be what I would expect from this team. Because mechanically, they are not short of carries. Yeah, so I don't know how well Miru played in the LFL, but I'm inclined to think he should be fine. In that he was a huge part of the R7 roster in 2023 as a carry. Snaker and Ackerman, good. Like, they're a really, really solid bot lane as a duo. I'm actually curious their CSD at 15 and GD at 15. Yeah, okay. That's interesting. The GD is higher. So that means that Snaker's getting golds through kills and other means, and not just CSD. Yeah. Snaker and Ackerman struck me as solid in lane, and big team fighters. So, in Baby, Canyon, and Ayuzu, the Fury roster. Yo, we will get to this. I am so insanely hyped for this Fury roster right now. Yeah, I did terrible things in my tier list. Let's put it that way. For the sake of Furia, I did terrible things on my tier list. Actually, you know what? I should do my tier list on... Oh no, but then we still haven't released the second half of the Gringos of the Verados. Wait, hold on. Did we tier list? I forgot what we released. Give me a sec. Let me check what we did in Gringos of the Verados. Hello? Why is my Firefox browser so slow? Or is this YouTube? It's YouTube, isn't it? Okay.
Welcome.
Whoops. Misclick. Wow, we were so far off. Okay, we didn't tier list yet. Okay. No, we did tier list. No, we didn't tier list. Okay. Never mind. I won't show my tier list then. Because we haven't dropped the King Goes to the Baratos episode yet. I will drop my tier list after we release the King Goes to the Baratos episode. Because I was wild. Let's put that way. And I blame Furia because it's too hyped for them. Yeah, but overall, I think Istres Estral, this is actually a really good team. For Brazilians who are overly hyped and looking down on the LA squads, don't. Because Internet Explorer over here, i.e., might body some of our teams because their hands are really, really good. If we're talking like super teams, like this is kind of it. Hey Spoods, Kissy clears. You missed the VKS summary, but I agree. I think if they get early wins, it'll be because of Kissy. And then I expect them to go in a slump after that once teams start figuring out Kissy. Your favorite document on Twitch is like yeah, this one's a little bit different. These are actually my prep sheets. This is how I prep for casts. And I'm not filling all the details because I'm just talking about the teams as a whole. Okay, on to Furia. The team that I am most hyped for is Furia. Like Woke said, in Baby Canyon and Ayuzi, we trust. On top of that, what makes me absolutely hyped about this is it's not just Tatu and Ayu. This entire team is actually absolutely insane. I am glad that they dropped the bag, or that they dropped a bag to pick this guy up. I still think Gigo, when he's on form, is one of the best top laners in the region. Like, we've seen Gigo body Robo and Wiser when he's in form. Problem is, Gigo is a little bit inconsistent. And frankly, I think he's like Robo in that he gets bored and then he starts throwing games randomly. Like he starts playing over aggressive, he starts over chasing. We've seen it in Robo before. The difference is Robo is better at coming back than Gigo is when Gigo fumbles the bag. But Gigod, Geogod, whoops. Gigod or Gigon? That's always the question. But I think Gigo is a great top laner that you can pick up, and you don't even need to give him resources. And most importantly, I think he pairs well with Tatu. Because as I mentioned, I think Gigo and Robo have very similar styles in that they both like to dominate the lane, but they're also both very good at reinforcing their jungler. And Tatu is kind of like Croc in that he loves early aggression. Hype rookie, man. Like, this guy, yeah, I am absolutely hyped for him, for his debut. Tatu back on INTZ Academy had a huge problem with that team because they just would not follow his lead. On Pain Gaming Academy, they were willing to back him up, and that's why Pain Gaming Academy looked wonderful. They got robbed when they lost the grand finals in Split 2 against Cade Stars. And again, I think that came a lot off Kissy, as well as their jungler, who I am blanking on right now. The Academy jungler was... Frick me. They benched their Academy jungler, Sarolo, yes, who I thought was really, really good. I don't know why they benched him for a little bit, and Lux came in. That was like super, super weird. But Kissy and Sarolo, I think, were like the biggest reasons why Pain Gaming Academy lost. But Tatu looked wonderful on that team, with a team who could back him up. And I think Furia can back him up. He's got a good champion pool as well. Not as big as Kissy or Sarolu, but still. Tatu's good for that. And despite his constant microaggression, I actually think Tatu has good map awareness, in addition to top micro. So I'm very, very hyped in a region that I feel like needs more junglers. Yeah, I feel like Tatu is the future. So absolutely love him. Tuts. I think Tuts is horrifically underrated by lots of people, myself included, because he gets overshadowed on this Furia squad. But last split, when he had what was it? Lonely? No, CZK? Wait, crap. I forget who the top laner was. CZK, not Lonely. Okay, yes. Yeah, when they had CZK, I felt like Tuts really stepped up last split and showed how good he is. Like, this guy can be the carry. But he's not always at that level. If he can consistently play to that carry level, I think this Furia roster is going to rock everybody. They literally have carries in every single role. Like even Jojo as a support can be a carry support. We saw it back, when he was playing with Titan a lot. We saw it last split as well with Ayu a little bit, like things like his Skarner support. Really good. His Rakan, his Rel. Jojo has always been very good at those sort of engaged champions and can literally swing fights. So if Tuts is not the biggest variance, that's Kigo and Tatu, but Tuts can be the guy who pushes this team over the edge to be like a top level team. So if he can get there, this will be a top team. Okay, now Ayuzi, our lovely little AD carry, who could have been, should have been, but kind of wasn't. We know he's got hands. We know he's mechanical, but he needs to not throw. So many times last bit we're like, okay, Ayu needs to step up. Ayu needs to step up. Ayu's good. He needs to step up, and we didn't see it, unfortunately. And I feel like this split, there's no reason not to. Now you've got carries in every single role. The pressure's not on Ayu to be the big carry anymore, like it kind of was with CZK and Wiz, them being the more stable style players. And well, CZK was supposed to be a carry, but he didn't always deliver. Yeah, and a lot of pressure got put on Ayu because of that. This split, that's not the case. So I'm hoping that frees up Ayu to be the monster that we know he can be. On paper, it's there, right? And Jojo really good. Strong engage. He's very tempered. Patient. Like I don't know. When I look at Jojo, I always think back to the time. So he was playing, with Titan back in the day, where it felt like Jojo was holding Titan's leash. Jojo, yeah, this guy is just. He's a really smart player. He's mechanically very, very good. His laning last split with Ayu was actually really good too. I always thought of Jojo as a weaker laning support, but last year changed my mind. I think he's actually very well-rounded support, one of the best in the South right now. And their coach, Thinkard, former LCS CLG winning coach. This guy brought a team made of a lot of rookies, 2 worlds. And I look at Furia and I'm like, well, okay, not so many rookies. Like Tatu's the only rookie on this team, but it's a very young squad. And I feel like this is perfect. Like it's a perfect coach. It's the perfect team. If we're talking super teams, I know Lunar, you joke about Pain Gaming. I know we just talked about Isser's Estral. I think Furia has the potential to be another super team. So I am very excited for this roster. And I really, really hope it comes together because I feel like there's so much potential here. In terms of potential, this roster could be like the best. Like, come split 3, this could be our representative from the South. I think this is a roster that if they live up to the full potential, they can like be a top 3 team even in LTA North. Lunar, you think RMC is weak to overhyping everything? Like I said, I am disgustingly hyped and excited for this Furia roster more than anything else. By the way, I'm sorry, I just realized, is my BGM not playing? I'm sorry, I just realized my BGM was off this entire time. Great. We've been without BGM for an hour. My bad. Yeah. Well, okay. Am I overhyping everything though? Like I feel like out of all the teams right now, the only team I've really hyped up is Furia. Like even for Pain, I didn't really hype them up. We know what they're expecting. I'm not super crazy high on Loud. VKS, I have my concerns with their roster changes. Leviathan, I kind of dismissed. Isser's Estral, I don't think I'm overhyping them. I think they are genuinely mechanically really, really, really good. And especially in Split 1, they're gonna body people. The big question for them is just how do they grow with this roster? Because super teams often don't work out, and this feels like a super team to me, right? Like you didn't pick these players for synergy. You picked them for that they're all individually really, really good. Whereas Furia, I see a bit more synergy here with how they like to play. Everybody can give way. We've seen that before on respective rosters. So I feel like Furia is the one team I'm like really overhyping, but I'm really excited for them. And I think this roster fresh out the can, it'll be strong. Like they have the hands to be pretty decent. Do I think they're going to be a top 3 team right out the can? Honestly, the odds are against it. I'm still hoping they will be, but I understand that they probably won't be right out the can. But split 2, split 3, I think they'll be good. Okay. Red Canids was the other team that didn't make any roster changes. So we know what to expect. FNB is the best BR top laner to never win. Hey Orbital, how you doing, buddy? Just running over the LTA. The spreadsheets come back, yeah. Yeah, you recognize the prep sheets. Yeah, I'm just using it to like put my thoughts down on the teams right now. Yeah, FNB is the best Brazilian top laner to never win. He's really, really good. We know that. Doesn't need resources. One of the best laners. Yeah, we know that. Aegis is aggressive and carry. Tends to actually demand resources more than give resources. And that's why I've always said Aegis and Greftar as a duo need, like, this is the perfect duo. And I think that's why Aegis keeps wanting Greftar. I'm overhyping for it right now. Nah. Who are you, Lunar? We've already moved past here, yeah. But I think that would be the only roster I overhype. I think. Maybe. Probably. I mean, we're down to the last two rosters. Greftar, funny enough, I know that they just did an interview. I think was it Mize Esports did an interview? Or somebody did an interview recently, like just today or yesterday with Greftar. And Greftar was like saying that, yeah, he gets stepped on by a lot of people. A lot of people look at him negatively. I kind of agree. I think Greftar is good. I've said this 101 times. I will defend Greftar. He's good. He's just not necessarily the best mechanical player around, but still good. And I think a lot of the complaints people have is because he plays around Aegis, which is what you need to do when you've got Aegis as your jungler. It's why it didn't work out when Red took in, what was it, Envy? That time where Envy was like a good laning player, but he works so badly with Aegis because Aegis demands resources. So yeah, just needs to balance roaming and laning. And that's something that he has to work with Aegis about, because I think Aegis is the one who keeps calling him outer lane, which puts him in really bad spots. And then Brunsey, Mr. Bot Gap, enough said. Frosty, very mechanical. Map awareness is meh. But his engage and his laning is really, really strong. This is another really strong laning duo. This, Brunsey Frosty, Smalley Pro Delta, Titan Curry. Those were the three bot lanes that were probably our strongest laning bot lanes. All really, really, really good. But we know what to expect from Red. I think out the gates, Red will be a top contender just because they kept the entire roster the same. And we saw what they did last split. They were third seed. If not for Smalley Pro Delta, I think Red actually would have beat Gate Stars with Aleko and been second seed. I know a lot of people were low-key kind of hoping Red or Gate Stars won and went to Worlds last year because both of them are more explosive teams. That said, I kind of feel like this Red roster is capped. Like, I don't know if they'll get much better than what we saw last split. They've got some magic around them, I'll give you that. This roster shouldn't work on paper, and we've seen them like self-destruct so many times. But when it works, it's good. They're just very, very inconsistent. So, I think they'll be good in split 1. Split 2 and split 3, I suspect they'll be solved. Kind of like what we were saying a little bit with VKS. I think they'll fall off as the split goes on. Meta-wise, though, I do think they do like to skirmish a lot. Aegis especially loves early fights, and he keeps pulling Greftar, so I think the meta suits them. And that's why I think split 1 will be good for them. And then we'll see how things go as the game kind of gets solved. For Red to be a top team, for Red to win, I'm looking at kind of two things. One is F&B. This guy's the most solid player, but and it's not fair to ask this of him, but I would like to see more from F&B in playoffs somehow. I won't call him a playoff choker, but he's also not like a playoff carry the way Robo, Gigo, even Wiser sometimes can be. But the big one for me is I'm looking at Brunsey, Frosty. I think Aegis Greftar, like their playstyle is what it is. Aegis carried a lot of games last split, and we cannot ask for more from Aegis Greftar at this point. Maybe we can get Greftar to find a better balance between laning and jungling, but I don't think that's going to be a big deal. It has to be Brunsey, Frosty, stepping up and becoming like the best bot lane in the region. They have it in them. They've got the potential, but so far they've only been second or third, and they need to be first if they want to win this region. It's just Estral and Leviathan. Their bot lanes are not the issue. So yeah, it'll be a test for Brunsey, Frosty, more than anything else. Okay. Last team left is Fluxu, and I am hype on Fluxu for different reasons. I'm hype on them personally. I do not think they will do that well, unfortunately. But I'm hype on them because this is a fairly young rookie roster. Drake Hero and Fu were both in Academy, what, 2 years ago? I mean, Fu and Drake Hero both made their CBLOL debuts last year. Hidan is promoting up from Academy again. Hidan has had CBLOL experience, but this time, look, I know some of y'all aren't fans of Hidan. I really think he got better last year. Like, he looks way better. In the past, I thought of him like Bull. Like, oh, this guy's just a carry champion player. In tank metas, he's going to be really bad. But no, I think he rounded out really well in Pain Academy. Back when he was in Pain Gaming Academy. Yeah, he rounded out. And now plays like weak side as well. His team fighting is really strong. Like, give him champions like Kennen, like Ornn. And he finds, Rumble. And he gets some amazing teamfight engages. His Gwen's really scary too, because not only is he good at the laning part of it, but his team fighting on Gwen was what really tipped the scales for Pain Gaming Academy a couple of times. Kind of like Super Clever, actually, which, by the way, it's criminal that Super Clever isn't on a tier 1 team. I know he's still with Kaboom in tier 2, but he should have been in tier 1, man. Super Clever, so good. Yeah, Hidan reminds me a bit of Super Clever. A little bit less hype for me than Super Clever, but a bit more experience than Super Clever. So he's really, really solid. Drake Hero, really aggressive again. I think Croc-esque. Very high risk. Medium reward. So in a way, like a slightly worse version of Croc. He doesn't throw as hard as Croc, but yeah. I would actually put Tatu over him, over Drake Hero right now. I think Tatu has a better sense for calculating, and Tatu gives you high risk and high reward compared to high risk, medium reward. And then Fu has grown so much, by the way, from his academy days. He's much more tempered now, so it's not lower risk, but still pretty decent reward. I think the biggest thing for me for Fu was that last year it felt like he learned how to play from behind. With impact, like he can still, even if he's behind in gold, even if he somehow loses the lane, he still has a lot of relevance in scaling and later team fights as well. So I think Fu's a really solid base for this roster, and he's probably going to be the most consistent player on this roster. I'm going to be honest, him and maybe Hidan, depending on how the top lanes go. And then we get Marvin Giggs, the Pain Gaming Academy bot lane. You can see there's 3 players from Pain Gaming Academy. The coach as well, BP, also is coming from Pain Gaming Academy. And then Tatu obviously got picked up by Furia. So the only Pain Gaming Academy player who didn't get picked up was the mid laner Quats, which is really unfair for him. Quats is really good. It's just that there's no space right now, I think, for a mid lane promotion. Kissy, Takui, they would have higher prio, unfortunately. But Marvin was like the hottest AD carry prospect. I think he's ready. Well, okay, I think he's mechanically ready for tier 1. Mentally is the big question for Marvin. And that's because, for those of you who aren't familiar with Marvin played 1 year of Academy. He made his debut in 2024. He won his very first split, and in his second split, he finished second and then won America's Challengers in summer. So, yeah, this guy's really, really good. I think his mental is there, but I'm not 100% sure. That is to say, my question for his mental is not because he has weak mental. It's more just, hey, I'm moving to tier 1 right now with no prior experience. He's still very, very young. I do think that the setup around him is not bad for his mental. He's got former teammates in Hidan and Giggs. He's got his former coach with him. He's, I heard that Titan was quite close to Marvin and with the Pain Gaming Academy roster as a whole. So having, Titan be in CBLOL as well, or in LTA South, will kind of be good for him as well. So props to him. Giggs. Giggs is an interesting one. Giggs has had some experience in tier 1 before. I think it was on Kaboom with Raven, if I recall correctly. He's solid. I'm going to be honest, I don't think Giggs is amazing. I think he's solid. He's no Pro Delta. He's no Jojo. He's no Frosty. His mechanics are okay. His map awareness is okay. He was good for tier 2, but I think in tier 1, Giggs will probably be a little bit on the weaker side. But paired specifically with Marvin as a bot lane, I think it has its merits. I think at least mentally they'll be more stable. The familiarity will help out a lot. So we'll see how Giggs does. If Giggs stays at the level he's playing at last year, I think he'll be replaced. Maybe not in Split 2, maybe Split 3, or maybe next year. But I think Giggs needs to level up. Yeah, he might be the weakest support for him or Winsome, I think, right now are the two who I'm least confident in. I think Winsome will be fine, actually. I think Giggs is probably the weakest. Again, he's solid, though. He's not bad. He's just not amazing. That said, why do I like Fluxu? I mean, it sounds like when I go individually, I don't think that the players are necessarily best in role at all. So they're obviously not a super team by any means. But they are the most, like, I don't want to say rookie heavy, but they've got a lot of younger players, right? Hidan's the most experienced player on this roster, and he's coming up from an academy roster right now. Drake, Hero, and Fu are newer to tier 1, and Marvin is completely brand new. Giggs had some experience, but again, very split time. So there's a lot of promise and potential on this team. They've got high potential, but I think they're going to struggle. And I don't think Fluxu will become a top contender this year. I could be wrong. I think this is the highest variance team, though, and I think that's going to be fun. I like watching teams with high variance because it's funny. Like, is Fluxu going to win the games? Maybe not, but I think they'll keep it amusing. Like, to me, they're the spiritual successors of Liberty. You know, like big, not big, but a lot of promotions and a lot of chaos in their games. And that's what I'm expecting to see a little bit from Fluxu. A lot of aggression. If they end up playing standard, I worry for them. I need to see Drake Hero just get around the map, make action happen with lanes that are willing to get into it. I think one of Liberty's biggest problems is last split or last year with Drake Hero and with AC was that they're not the lanes weren't able to keep up with their junglers. The jungler was a big spot. I thought Drake Hero was great. A lot of the early leads came from him in the jungle. With this Fluxu, with these lanes, I think the lanes can keep up a little bit better. I still think they're going to be losing their lanes in straight up 2v2s and 1v1s. But when it comes to skirmishing, when it comes to fighting, these guys are ready for it. And I think that's where they can maybe kind of cheat a little bit and mask some of their growing pains that they're going to have early on. So I'm excited to see Fluxu pop off the same way as I was excited to see Liberty popped off. And I think last split in CBLOL, Liberty started off with a winning streak as well. So I could see Fluxu doing that. And keep in mind, to get eliminated, the fastest way you can get eliminated is just 4 straight losses in a row. And likewise, if you can get 4 straight wins in a row, that would put you in a good spot already. You'd be already 5th or 6th. If you can win 6 games in a row, you already qualify for the playoffs, right? And it's fully possible if Fluxu makes that run. Fluxu, the organization, made that run last split with like a huge winning streak to start the season. Liberty, who I feel like this current Fluxu roster is the spiritual successor of, wow, I'm struggling with that word, also made a strong run. So yeah, if they can win 6 games in a row, they qualify. Now, we should quickly touch on the bracket as well while we're here, because as much as I'm saying, oh, if you can win 6 games, you can do it. The bracket is not so easy. They face Red right away. And if Fluxu wins, they then face either my most hyped roster, which is Furia, or they face Isurus Estral, who's like insanely mechanically strong. And even if you want to play fast and messy with a team like that, you're probably going to lose to a Hands team. So it's a really tough run for Fluxu. I don't realistically think they have much of a chance. I think Fury has a better shot than Fluxu does, unfortunately. But this side of the roster, it's a lot of chaos theory. This side I think is actually easier run. On this side, you've got Pain versus Loud. Pain is an incredibly mentally strong team. Pain is your current reigning champions. K8star has a lot of chaos factor going for them, and with their coaching staff, they often have very fast meta reads. I think there's one weak team in Leviathan, and I think this side's harder, but this side might have like an equal average strength. There's less variance on this end. So, yeah. But all in all, you can kind of see what I mean. I feel like a lot of the teams have kept their identities. K8star's flipped their identity a little bit. Leviathan kept their identity. Pain, Loud, they're going to play the same way. Isurus Estral, I think they've largely kept their identity with a lot of just strong players individually in every role and carries you can play anywhere. Furia slightly changed their identity. It's the same idea they wanted to go for, except for the jungle role, where I think Tatu is a lot more volatile and aggressive than Wiz. But other than that, I mean, they kept the bot side all the same. Gigo is an upgrade over ZZK, but ZZK was meant to be a carry, so I think largely, by and large, Furia has maintained that sort of hype and expectations. Red didn't change their roster at all. And then Fluxu changed because they were a mess. I think this split, they are much more, they are less of a mess, but their roster is a lot cheaper in terms of name value as well. So yeah, by and large, I'm not expecting too much chaos. In terms of spread, skill spread, I actually think it's kind of close. The only teams that I think are going to be significantly weaker are Leviathan and Luxu. Beyond that, I think every other team could be competitive. I've got some questions around Kate Stars. I don't think Kate Stars this year will be a top contender, maybe. So it'll be like top 5, and then PKS, and then Lev Luxu is kind of my expectation in some sort of order, something like that. But I'm hesitant on Kate Stars because CL has broken my expectations. Like CL has earned a lot of credit with how he did Kate Stars last year, so they could be higher. You disagree? Wait, sorry, Lunar. Punctuation. I'm not sure. Do you disagree, comma, you think Pain won't be competitive? Or do you disagree that Pain won't be competitive? Because I'm not. Yeah, because I'm not saying Pain won't be competitive. So I assume you mean that you think Pain won't be competitive this split. And if that's the case, I can't agree with that just because Titan Curry is just so damn strong. And so is Wiser. If the side lanes are strong enough in the current meta, you're okay. I do agree that Karioka and Dinkedo need to step up or they could lose their trophies, their champion status. But I do think they should be competitive. In fact, I think, especially for Split 1, they should be the gold standard. They are still the favorites to me for Split 1. Though, part of me is still afraid they're going to crap the bid randomly. Yeah, and if they crap the bid randomly, I suspect they'll come from jungle mid. But they should be competitive. That shouldn't be an issue. Okay, so yeah, that's LTA South in a nutshell. I'm looking very much forward to it. I think it's going to be very competitive. I think round 1 is going to be very, very spicy. I didn't like the draw because of Pain versus Loud, but I know a lot of people love that. And it's a me problem. I acknowledge that. Other than that, though, I think first round draws are good. Second round is going to be, I think, not so fun. There are clear favorites, though, I think, in a lot of these. Like, Red's heavily favored over Fluxu. Ice should be favored over Furia, as hype as I am for Furia. Kate Stars Leviathan. Kate Stars should be favored. Pain should be favored over Loud. But there are some good, interesting storylines, and there's potential for upset, which I value a lot. So, yeah. This starts on Saturday. And that would be 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. And I think that's 12 p.m. Brazil time right now. I'm a bit hesitant just because I always get thrown by daylight savings for time zones. But yeah, that's this Saturday that LTA South starts. And tomorrow we'll go over the LTA North teams, which I think is also kind of interesting. The LTA North made a lot more changes, and I think stylistically the teams have changed a lot compared to last split. I mean, 100 Thieves and... Well, actually, did they make more changes? I mean, 100 Thieves retained most of their roster. Team Liquid didn't make any changes. FlyQuest didn't make any changes. So I guess they made... Yeah, I should probably actually have counted how many changes they made. But I think LTA North has a lot to discuss as well. And we will do that tomorrow. This stream already went longer than I thought. I thought it'd just take about an hour. Because for South, we kind of know the regions a little bit better, so I talked less. But 100 Thieves, 100 Leaves. I like that, Lunar. 100 Leaves. Provisional guest spot, whatever the hell that means. I'm not a fan of that. They made one change, which was their AD carry position, which I was disappointed in-ish, but like, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Like I said, I think tomorrow will be longer. I thought today would be less than an hour. Tomorrow will probably, I suspect, be like an hour half maybe. We'll see how it goes, but that's it for today for now. And yeah, see y'all tomorrow. FBI is a top 5 marksman in the region. Yes, I was disappointed not because I think FBI is a downgrade. I was more just disappointed that what's his face? That Tomo, unfortunately, got dropped, I think was my bigger issue. Because I think Tomo is good, and Tomo just needs time. But he got picked up by Dignitas, so it is what it is. At least he found a spot. And for 100 Thieves, FBI is probably the better short-term choice. Yeah, like I said, FBI is an upgrade currently. I just think Tomo can grow, and I'm a bit disappointed that 100 Thieves decided to let him go and not continue to grow him. But they're a provisional guest spot. They've disappointed me in plenty of other ways, as is. Okay, enough there. We'll talk tomorrow about this. Okay, Peace out. See y'all tomorrow. Bye.